When it comes to planning, precision, and projections, no one does it quite like finance. It's an industry that's built on secure, accurate, and data-driven insights that help the biggest and smallest companies plan for their future. And like just about everything else these days, finance is seeing a big tech upgrade, with AI and advanced analytics weaving their way into every corner of the enterprise. It's no surprise finance teams are starting to leverage new tools and, frankly, save themselves some serious time. So I reached out to two brilliant minds who live and breathe this space. Michael McGeein, Program Director and Product Manager Leader at IBM, and Brian Simpson, Senior Director of Pre-Sales for Data and AI at Converge. In this episode, we'll unpack how AI first began showing up in finance, the broader ripple effects across organizations, and how automation is redefining what it means to build accurate, agile forecasts. Michael, Brian, it's great to be with you. So excited about this conversation. Welcome to the Edge of IT. Why don't we start off by having the two of you introduce yourselves? Michael, why don't you share a little bit about your background?
Sure, Jonathan. So my name is Matt McGeein. I lead the product management team here at IBM on planning analytics. I have been in the finance business for longer than I care to admit publicly. I'm a chartered professional accountant, and I have been for over 30 years. And I've been in the product management game for probably 20 plus, and I've led the plan analytics team for the last 6 or 7. So yeah, it's been a while. I've been doing this basically my entire career.
Excellent. Brian Simpson, our favorite dungeon master. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Brian Simpson. I'm a senior director in our data and AI practice here at Converge. My background is not too dissimilar from Mike's. I've been working in the FP&A space for almost 20 years now. I've worn many hats and helped many organizations get up and running on modern FP&A technologies. Before I was with a consulting firm, I actually worked with Mike at IBM. So we go way back.
Michael, why don't you take us back in time? How did AI begin weaving its way into finance? And what areas of the industry are changing most rapidly because of it?
Great question, Jonathan. It's been really interesting from my perspective. When AI started to appear, I'll say it was in the late 2018, 2019 timeframe when our clients started to ask us about particularly forecasting. That was the item that I always think our leading edge clients were talking about, they were thinking about. So we worked with a number of them and and brought some, what I think of it as AI or algorithmic capabilities into plan analytics in particular. We started that in the fall of 2020, and we've continued to evolve that. So, and a lot of it was driven, like we always try to do with our clients, is we call it from an MVP perspective, minimum viable product, and then we get feedback from our clients. So we work with some of those early clients because we added the capability to do, we call it univariate forecasting using Holt Winters and some other algorithms. Make it easy for somebody who's not a data scientist to be able to do the things they need to be able to do. And then we received a lot of feedback of this is great, but, and that's how we really managed to iterate and I think augmented it pretty significantly over probably 3 or 4 years until we finally got to the point where we had both univariate and multivariate forecasts with about 4 or 5 algorithms available. We also had early clients who were interested in extending what we do in plan analytics itself, particularly our clients who are in the supply chain area. Big issue is constraints-based planning. And especially during COVID, it was the topic. Where do I put things? How do I maximize? So that was really the big thing. And a lot of our clients, they use a capability from IBM generally. Some people use Python and other capabilities, but we have the capability to extend beyond that with decision optimization, which is a capability from IBM. So that's all. I put it in the category of traditional AI algorithms and all that kind of stuff. The big thing now we've been seeing the most interest in is agentic AI is the term we use here at IBM, and lots of people do in the market, because it's how can I put things together to automate and really make the automation possible without having to have a lot of deep technical skills. Like I said in my introduction, I've been doing this a long time. RPA became all the rage, robotic process automation. I work at IBM. We talk in acronyms all the time. So robotic process automation. Agentic AI is really what I consider making that really accessible for the average finance person. RPA is just, it's too technical and requires too much wiggly niggly stuff. So that's kind of the two areas that how we started, and then what's the latest thing.
That's great. I mean, you're absolutely right. RPA was connecting those disparate systems for the purpose of automation, where agentic AI is taking that next logical step, right? Which may not always just be one step forward, right? Because sometimes it's a step to the left, sometimes it's a step to the right. And it gives the system that flexibility to take those next actions that you or I or Brian, right, might just do naturally. Brian, zooming out for a second, outside of finance, how do you see how AI has changed the pace and depth of analytics? I mean, you've been working in this space for your entire career. What new doors do you see that it's opened, and what's in front of us, compared to what was there 5 years ago?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so speaking of pace specifically, AI has dramatically increased the speed at which we process data, generate insights from data, automate a lot of the traditional analytics workflows. So, analytics workflows are often reliant on manual data wrangling, statistical modeling, human interpretation of the data, and that's all being replaced or oftentimes augmented at least by AI-driven automation. This has significantly lowered barriers to enable more and more people within an organization to adopt the tools, to analyze data, and to make those data-driven decisions, which I think is really, really important. You guys were talking about RPA and how technical it is. Well, now, folks can leverage these tools without a ton of technical training. And I think that's really important towards democratizing analytics within an organization. And I think it's important to recognize as well, this is not just a technical upgrade we're talking about of a tool set. AI is really reshaping how organizations operate.
It's really interesting to see where this is all going to go. Before we talk about specific tools, let's talk about strategy. How does financial analytics shape the big picture decisions that organizations have to make today? Just for our audience, give us a little planning analytics 101, so to speak.
So the product's been around for a long time. The underlying technology was created over 40 years ago, and we've iterated and augmented. But it's interesting as I look back over time, it almost always comes from the same perspective where things change over time, but always starts in finance and then extends out. Almost all of our clients who've been, and I always think of them as the clients who are very, very successful. And I don't mean just with our product. I mean, they're successful at a corporate level. We have some clients who are, I'll say, recognized for their forethought and how they approach things. So we have clients, for example, who use us for finance, but they've made major, major investments in understanding the skills of their own workforce. So they're really focused around how can I leverage this technology from the perspective of improving my overall organizational, and obviously everything comes down to, from a profit perspective, finance. So whether it's workforce planning, or as I mentioned earlier about the supply chain, we have a number of clients very interested in that area. During the pandemic, we had a client in Finland. They're actually a bakery of all things. When the pandemic happened, people may not remember this, everybody stayed home. So all of a sudden they were producing a lot of product to go to stores. All of a sudden it was bakeries, and people were staying home. So it was interesting to see how these things change. And they saw the result in how their financials all changed and impacted over time. So generally speaking, when you think about it from a finance perspective, we always talk about it from integrated. Some of our other products talk about connected. We're very focused on integration. When you make a change in your supply chain, you have to understand what that means from a cash flow perspective. You have to understand what it means from a profit perspective. Another shift we saw in the last probably 2022, early 23, all of a sudden, everyone was interested in understanding working capital and understanding CapEx. But it's because interest rates changed. I mean, I've been around a long time. For the longest time, interest rates were 1%, 2%, 3%. When interest rates at 7-8%, boy, that interest expense all of a sudden becomes important. So it's interesting how you see those shifts. But if you have the right technologies, you can extend that and understand, I can do this. I can do it. It's really the ability to pivot. So that's what I think of when I think of the broad perspective.
What I think you're saying is planning analytics functionally is the organization and forecasting for the movable pieces within an organization. So the people, the parts, and the actions, right? And so all of those translate into dollars, which is how the business is moving forward. Any of those things changes, dollars go down or dollars go up. So planning analytics is sort of, how do we see where we are right now? How do we forecast where we're going in the future so that we can keep moving forward?
Yeah, exactly. And the big thing is evaluate the alternatives. I could do this. I could do that. What is the outcome? Because that's what, forecasting always comes down to, what are the alternatives?
Right. The what ifs. So layering on top of that, you're saying is the what if scenarios.
Exactly.
So Brian, what trends are leading the charge in financial planning analytics or FP&A tool development right now? Is there anything emerging that you see as being a game changer?
Sure. Of course, the infusion of AI capabilities into FP&A tools is definitely a game changer. It started with predictive forecasting, which is more like machine learning, graduating into natural language interfaces to interact with the solution, generative AI insights on data, outlier and anomaly detection, data explainability, code generation. The list goes on, right? And that kind of technology is obviously being infused into most software out there. But those are really features, and what that's enabling inside the FP&A tool is all about agility, right? It's sort of piggybacking on what Mike just said. It's all about giving finance teams dynamic driver-based models, allowing them to adjust assumptions on the fly, align plans across a complex organization. And I think in today's volatile environment, old school static forecasts just become obsolete too quickly. And so we need to have real-time forecasting and scenario-based forecasting accuracy to test assumptions, test the impact of inflation or interest rate changes or tariffs. And I think it's a combination of AI tools that are helping with the productivity and the automation and the interpretation of the data, combined with the real-time nature of the technology that's enabling that agility.
So we're seeing that AI, I guess, is helping boots on the ground interact with their data and their scenarios using natural language. I wonder, do you see a trend in the opposite way, in the way that we can now access data that is natural language and turn it into structured data for organizations to use in ways that maybe we didn't previously?
Yeah, for sure, using a natural language interface or just a simple wizard or GUI-based interface is enabling users to generate data and produce detailed and granular budgets and forecasts that may not have been possible in the old-fashioned sort of manual way of generating data. And so common examples of that are organizations that plan at a very, very granular level of detail. So I'll pick a manufacturing client of ours. Their need was to use real-time forecasts to optimize production and inventory. And I'm talking about production across potentially millions of SKUs of products, and then across potentially thousands of customers. To do that, in a manual data entryway would have been next to impossible. But leveraging modern tools, they can perform that forecast at that level of detail and get it all done in, going from, in this specific example, they went from 8 hours down to about 20 minutes to generate that forecast. And that just demonstrates how the tools and the analytics directly support operational agility.
Cloud compute is a big piece of the puzzle, especially, we know a lot of organizations use AWS. How does running finance applications on AWS or the cloud support broader modernization goals and AI integration?
Running any type of application on a cloud platform gives you access to the entire stack of tools available on that platform. So it gives you a ton of functionality. It gives you the ability to deploy quickly. and get away from the business of like managing servers, managing upgrades, patches, disaster recovery, and really focusing on delivering business value. So I like to say it's improving time to value, or maybe a better way to put it would be improving the value for your time.
I mean, let's talk about these tools being effective. Among the places that AI is being adopted in finance, where are you seeing the most tangible impact so far?
What we've seen with our clients and prospective clients is, as I mentioned earlier, about the algorithmic forecasting. We've seen a lot of clients in the early days. I'll use a term I use all the time. There was some tire kicking, always happens, but we've had a number of our significant clients have really started to embrace the AI capability, the forecasting capability. I'll use a couple of examples. We have a client in Europe who does orphan drugs. So having their forecast accurate is so critical because they only make a few doses of each medication that they have created. So it's critical because the cost is high and the market is so small. So that having a really accurate forecast is critical to them. We have other clients who are using it to understand what their demand is going to look like and where they have it's not an orphan drug, the things they do. So they're always interested in what's the accuracy of the forecast. One client took a different approach. I never thought someone would do this. They actually treat the forecast like any other person who's forecasting. And then they use that algorithmic forecast and they share it with everybody. So the salespeople are putting their own forecast. They can all look at what the algorithm said, and people are starting to believe the algorithm. So those are a couple of choices, but it's been really interesting over the first 3 or 4 years of the algorithmic forecast. A lot of adoption of that, and we've really started to see it here at IBM. We're actually using it ourselves for something called touchless forecasting. There's a big study done on it. It's a client zero story. So lots of interesting stuff on the forecasting front in particular.
Where do you see this being most impactful so far in finance? Yeah, I guess thinking of it this way, right? Finance is traditionally very well resourced, right? People have been doing this. They know how to do their jobs. In order for somebody to change behavior, right? Change is always difficult. What is moving the needle and making such a big impact that organizations are really starting to lean into this and adopt?
Sure. And I really like Mike's response about the predictive forecasting capabilities in modern tools. Mike was using an example that I call a guidepost example, where we use the generated predictive forecast as an indicator or a guidance for the humans to complete their forecast. There's a flip side to that, which is using the predictive forecast to check the work of the humans to make sure they're completing it correctly and just give it kind of a sanity check. So I really like that use case as well. And then taking that sort of concept of predictive analytics and advanced analytics capabilities in the tool to the next level, and including the natural language processing, the virtual assistant, the generative AI capabilities to make it easier for some users to interact with the system. A lot of the time, folks that are responsible for completing a budget or a forecast, they're not Excel wizards. It's not their favorite activity. They might be, managers of a manufacturing floor. And so they've got other responsibilities, and learning technology may not be at the top of their list. And so leveraging features that make it easier to complete the task, to understand the data, to get insights on that data, I think that's a really important capability to bringing this solution to more and more individuals within an organization.
In my experience in building models that do forecasting, right, it is key to make sure that you're getting user buy-in, and there's no better way than putting those forecasting numbers next to their own numbers, so that people start feeling comfortable that this is not a replacement. It's an accelerator to make things easier for them. How are you seeing FP&A functions adapt in real time to the volatility that there is in our economic environment? I've been around for a couple of years, and it seems that, just things are just moving, given COVID that happened recently and just all the economic uncertainty that there is. How are you seeing people use AI insights?
So it's been really interesting, Jonathan, with the AI capabilities, both the traditional and the new generative AI capabilities. A lot of our clients are really interested in how can they free up time, because there are so many demands on them because of all this. I always refer to it as, from probably 2020 onward, to disruption. There's just been so much disruption in industry, in the market, in the overall economy. Everyone is struggling with how do I deliver value for my organization, prove my worth, and help drive the organization forward. So it's been really interesting how some of the insights capability, like we have some things in plan analytics, chart insights, for example, and outlier analysis, and those types of things, just for people to understand, so they're not spending a lot of, I call it, cognitive load of looking at data to trying to find the things I should worry about, where we try to highlight the things they should be worried about. And they can use the technology or not. It's completely up to them. We have a lot of that capability. We're also expanding that capability to some things that Brian mentioned earlier about making it easier for the end user. So today you have to write scripts and do things in whatever technology you're using. We're trying to use the generative capability to do some of that for you and suggest your script might look like this, and then you're just going to fill in the blanks, if you will. So those are the types of things. But I think every FP&A professional is interested in, how can I show the value I'm delivering to the organization and my team, just to help with the load and prove my own worth. So there's kind of those two things. I think it's always been that way.
Cloud has always been a big piece of the puzzle to a strategy, at least in the last 10 years, right? How does running finance applications in the cloud on AWS help support that broader modernization goal and AI integration?
A lot of organizations are under a mandate to move workloads to the cloud, right? So this is continuing in that same thought. Deploying FP&A applications on the cloud gives us access to the entire technology stack that comes on that cloud. So all those tools and capabilities are then available to us. And probably the biggest advantage is speed to deploy. So we can get up and running on new technologies, new solutions really, really quickly, right? Gone are the days of managing servers, provisioning new servers, virtual machines, upgrading them, patching them, managing backup and disaster recovery. We really want to get away from all that and focus on delivering business value. And so I like to say that cloud gives us that time to value, or to put it a better way, we get more value for our time. And that's really just focusing on high value activities, letting the hyperscalers handle the mundane server management.
Sounds like what Michael's just answer was to the other question, right? Which is, these tools are really giving people more time to work on those high value tasks and worry less about the little things, so to speak, right? Get more time back into your day, be able to do more what if scenarios, think more about the business than just crunching numbers. It's fascinating to hear just how early AI began to show up in finance. 2018 doesn't feel that long ago, but massive changes have happened since then. What started with forecasting has expanded across entire organizations, connecting data, automating processes, and unlocking insights faster than ever. Like Michael and Brian said, we've moved beyond static spreadsheets into dynamic, agile models that actually predict what's next. And that opens up the door to a big question. How do you scale something like this? What role does cloud infrastructure, especially platforms like AWS, play? Can you share a real-world example? I mean, boots on the ground, where AI-powered forecasting has made a measurable difference, especially in high-pressure sectors like logistics and manufacturing.
Yeah, well, I'll refer back to my previous example. Generating predictive forecasts or generating budget or forecast data at the SKU level across potentially millions of SKUs for every customer, for every vendor, is something that's traditionally not been possible in older, like Excel-based forecasting models. It's just too high a volume of data, too much number crunching to run on your little laptop. And frankly, there would be issues with confidence in that data, even if you were able to generate that in Excel. Modern technology, especially AI-infused technology, gives us the ability to do budgeting and forecasting at that level of detail, while still maintaining confidence that if you were to drill all the way down, you would see numbers that are correct, and we can reconcile it right at the top level. And that's just the start, right? That's just getting numbers into the system. And then we can enable all of the, the more modern capabilities like scenario analysis and dynamic driver-based planning.
So it gives people the ability to do what they've been doing, but also do it faster, right? So it's not abstracting the numbers, right? The numbers are still there in many ways, right?
Yeah, and in some cases, in traditional technologies like Excel, it simply couldn't handle the volume. So if you take your pick of your favorite big retail chain or manufacturing organization and think about all the products and the part numbers and the customers and the locations and the manufacturing plants, if you really want to produce a detailed bottom-up business plan, forecast, or budget, you do need to capture data at that level. But then you need to consolidate all of that data and be able to slice and dice it. And so legacy tools simply couldn't handle that degree of granularity or detail. Whereas modern tools, not only can they handle that and automate a lot of that, things like the reconciliation of that data, reconciling the bottom up versus the top down approach, using AI to understand massive volumes of data and produce insights on that data is really powerful. Having the AI or predictive analytics engine do some number crunching on historical trends and produce, a forward-looking forecast on that level of data, that volume of data is a really powerful capability that didn't exist however many years ago.
It has always been the case, right? That people see technology as something that's taking away jobs. When we think about the options for careers in the finance space, is this taking away a job, or is it really just raising the bar for what somebody needs to do in this role? Or is it just changing it drastically?
It's interesting. Me being a finance professional for so long, it's been one of the big, I'll say, changes in the industry. There's a lack of professional capabilities, whether it's degreed accountants like myself or finance people. So I always think of this not so much replacing jobs as upping the skills. And it lets people who are involved in the finance operation do things that are actually adding value to the business instead of, I think of it as rote work. There's things you do every month in a finance organization. You have to reconcile, you have to make sure your variances are explained. A lot of that capability can be done automatically or algorithmically, and then people can review it instead of sitting down and doing this, what I think of as work that has to get done, but it could be done via the machine. So I think of that as one of the big things. And a lot of the AI capabilities are about providing that AI from the perspective of, these are the things we've highlighted. We need people who understand the business to explain those differences. You may realize that you had a price increase in, I'm here in Canada, in lumber, for example, due to tariffs. So that may be what drove your variance. It may be because you've had a fire in some area. But it's that understanding, by not having to spend all that time with rote work and actually spending time providing information for leadership to understand what's happened to the business. That's probably where a lot of the value is going to come from. And people will see that as more value to the business.
So what would you say to a finance leader that's hesitant to adopt these AI tools?
There's a lot of people who've been reluctant to do things in the past, especially where technology has been changing. I always try to look at it from the perspective of, look at what the technology can do for you rather than think it's going to replace something. Think of how it can augment or how it can add on to the things you're delivering for the organization. There's an old adage that if you can either embrace the technology or get run over by it. So I would much rather embrace the technology.
Yeah, that does sound a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
To add to that, Jonathan, I would say from my point of view, I usually reframe AI as a strategic enabler and not a technology gamble. We're trying to demonstrate and potentially showcase tangible wins and low risk proof of concepts or pilots, ways to get started. Usually when we have that conversation or even show a short demo, we can shift a finance leader's mindset from doubt to curiosity, which is a good step forward.
Yeah, showing them how it can accelerate that value flywheel, right? Quicker time to insights, quicker time to decision. Here's how the forecasting works. Allow them to see the art of the possible.
You got it.
As we close, I want us to get a little bit imaginative. if you had a clean slate, there's no old workflows, there's no spreadsheets, there's no whatever. How would you build a finance organization from the ground up using AI?
It's really interesting, especially people who embrace the technologies. I think that would be the way I would if I was hiring a brand new finance organization in a brand new company. I would really be focused on people who embrace new technology. It doesn't need to be just AI, just generally new technology, and it doesn't need to be new. It just needs to be new for the things they're trying to accomplish. I've seen a lot of change over 30, 40 years in industry, and I've seen the spreadsheet go from Lotus 123 to, if you're old enough to remember Lotus 123, to what became Excel, which is now a billion plus users. But I think coming at it from the perspective of people who are really interested in how can I accomplish what needs to get done to drive the value of the organization forward, and how can these technologies be put together. Like, I think of the things we do with our tool and plan analytics, with dashboarding and the workspace capability, and we've talked about scenario modeling and driver-based planning. Those were things that were unheard of 10 or 15 years ago. And now it's anticipated you're using a driver-based plan. Obviously, why would you not do that? But just taking that same approach with both AI and generative AI, how can it augment the things we're trying to do, to understand outliers, to understand how to forecast? Can I rerun the forecast quickly? We have clients who rerun their forecasts every week to see if anything has changed, and they will tweak their cash flow forecast, if you will. So yeah, it's really interesting, but you have to be a whole team who wants to embrace how can I make things better for the organization. You really don't want a team that's people who are worried about their own responsibilities, how you move the whole organization.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the same question, I think my answer would be pretty similar. If I had a clean slate to build an FP&A team from scratch, I would be embracing modern technology where possible. I would be hiring a team that's ready to take on those challenges, to embrace the technology, that is okay learning new things and exploring some of the new trends in FP&A and AI in general, keeping an open mind about how the technology works, and being an early adopter, as scary as that may be, might be the edge, right? Because AI tools are being used by pretty much every organization out there. Everyone's looking for how to get ahead, or how to identify the right use cases and make the best use of AI tools. And so I would want to keep an open mind and be an early adopter and really be on the leading edge of the technology.
Mike, you mentioned this idea of how, 5-10 years ago, people didn't use driver-based forecasting and planning. They didn't optimize their models every single day or do forecasting every single day. But now they are. That's the thing now. And if you're not doing that, you're left behind. Given that you've been doing this for more than 10, 20 plus years, looking into your crystal ball, what is the next thing that people can't do now that maybe they will be doing in 5 to 10 years?
Interesting question. So there's a couple of areas where I think there's, I'll say, disruption happening. I think what we've been doing from a forecasting perspective, that has gotten tremendous traction, and we're getting a lot of interest in how to expand beyond the things we provide already. More and more allowing different algorithms, which isn't revolutionary, but allowing the finance professional to choose the algorithm that fits their business. We have one particular client who's very interested in iterative proportional spreading, which I had to go look it up how it works. But it's something that they're really interested in because they're working from a constraints perspective. So it always comes down to, so it's the things that businesses are thinking about that are more specific. We have clients in like literally every industry, but we have one client, particularly in Florida. They want to get their close down to 1 day. They've got it down to 3. Most companies take between 10 up to 17, 18 days. So accelerating the close allows more time for analysis and planning. So the other big thing I think we're going to see happen is we're going to see more and more technology from a voice perspective. We're talking to, and I'll say to millennials, and they think a lot of these things need to be mobile. They need to be where they are. I think we're going to see, for a while, mobile was all the rage, and then it kind of just disappeared. I think we're going to see it resurge, and I think we're going to see it resurge in a big way. because people who are involved in the business want to be able to do the things easily on the go. So I think those are a couple of things that could really change.
Yeah, if I were to kind of mentally project out what the most requested features are 5 years from now, we do see a lot of need for enhancing generative AI for narrative and strategic insight on data. So think about using Gen AI to draft like a board-ready annual report, or investor Q&A responses, or strategic recommendations on the business. So I feel like right now, today, we're scratching the surface of what Gen AI can do in terms of understanding and interpreting business data, but the potential is so much more, so much more. Even when we talk about what if analysis, asking things like, what would be the impact of hiring 5 new sales reps? We can do that a little bit today with driver-based planning, but we have to know all the levers to pull. We had generative AI and kind of take some of those concepts to the next level, and even include Mike's voice-activated interactions. It'd be great to just ask it those questions and get a real researched, well-thought-out response, and responses that could form the basis of an annual report or something that is narrative heavy. I think that's going to be a game changer.
In my non-FP&A mind, I mean, my wife does the FP&A for our home. I start to think about sort of combining what the two of you said, right? Plus, obviously, what I've seen in movies, because we know that's going to happen, right? But taking current events, current things, and doing what if scenarios, and maybe running lots of potential simulations to see where they logically go, and getting those results back. And I imagine if that's driven by a conversation of, like you said, Brian, what if we hire 5 account execs and they are all in the Northeast? And then all of a sudden, all these workers spin up and do a market analysis of the Northeast and a market analysis of different movements and trends, the stock market, take that and run 100 different scenarios, and then look at the probability of things happening and then bring back results all at once.
Yeah, and imagine taking those results and turning it into like a strategic recommendation. So, hey, based on the scenario, the inputs you gave me, here's the recommendation. And having that recommendation have research behind it that explains how it came to that result. I think that would be amazing.
Brian, you know me, I like thinking of all sorts of weird scenarios, as I'm sure, a dungeon master also does do. As we leave each other today, if there's one thing that our listeners can hold on to and remember from today's time together, what would it be?
I would say, from my perspective, that AI is it's not just about accelerating analytics. It's redefining how we work day to day. It's redefining who gets to ask the questions, how fast they get the answers back, how confidently we can act on those answers. I guess the one real takeaway would be, we're just getting started here.
I would piggyback some of what Brian says, the idea of embracing AI and the things it can do for you as a financial professional. I think we're only just getting started. I think the adoption to the cloud has well understood that that's why we do it. The other thing I think that everyone should be thinking about is, how can I provide value to my organization? I think it helps with your career. It helps your employer to understand the value you provide. And the AI is one of those tools that can help with that. So those are some of the things that I always think about when people ask me.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for taking this time out of your busy days. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Doc.
Thanks for the invite.
AI in finance is already delivering. But what it stands to deliver, now that's truly game-changing. If I were placing bets, this is a stock I wouldn't want to short. We've gone from AI being a nice to have to something truly foundational. And with agentic AI on the rise, we're seeing advanced analytics that are no longer locked behind deep technical expertise. Now, more people across the business can ask big questions and get meaningful answers quicker than before. And like in any industry, the real value isn't just in the tech. It's what happens when smart tools meet smart people. That's where real transformation starts. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, visit us at convergetp.com to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe to Edge of IT on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your favorite shows.